and spoil the child. You see, that meant I got in trouble all the time when I was a youngster. Man, I just didn't like school. And that was my reality up until my 9th grade year, where I learned two things. I learned that I was good at math and I was good at girls. See, those two things together, they worked together to help me get through high school such that I was offered a scholarship to go to Penn State University to pursue an engineering degree. And as I went on to pursue that degree, I learned that it was a virtual, unsupervised Garden of Eden on the college campus. So I did everything I was big enough to do except go to class. And in essence, I dropped out of school. I went in the Marine Corps, and life came and taught me a few lessons. And after it taught me those lessons, I did what any combative young man would do. I ran home and asked my mom and dad, what should I do next? Well, they said, listen, son, I think it's time for you to finish your degree. So that's what I did. I went back and I got my degree, and I took a job teaching in North Philadelphia. I thought that was going to be just, a temporary thing until I got to do what I really wanted to do in life. But when I got in front of those students, those hungry students for knowledge, the urban students that looked like me, and they were from communities like me, man, I fell in love with the teaching and learning process. I mean, they were attacking the algebra that I was teaching them. They were using problem-solving skills and critical thinking and engaging in scientific debate. And man, I just said, listen, this is it. This is what I want to be for the rest of my life. I'm going to be a teacher. But that presented a problem because I didn't like teachers, because I didn't like school at that time. But I met a few teachers, and they were cool people. They were all right. In fact, they really cared about their students. But I began to ask a question because I noticed that our students in particular, they were failing. They weren't doing well in our courses. Many weren't graduating and going on to college. I just couldn't see how the education that we were presenting to our students was helping them or impacting them in any positive way. So I began to ask a question then back in my career that still gets me in trouble now. How can people who are so wonderful and care so much about their students be so bad at teaching them? Now, I know what you're going to say. You can't blame all that on the students, on the teachers. The teachers, there's plenty of factors outside of the classroom that are not in the control of the educator that impact academic achievement, especially in urban arenas. And I know that. I'm not combating that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that early in my career, I established a standard that I still have now in my career. You see, I believe that the greatest measure of any teacher is what their students are capable of doing and demonstrating that they can do after they leave that classroom. So if you were to fast forward in my career a few years, one of the many studies that I did, I got 1,300 men of color together. And I basically wanted to see what those men of color who were all achieving at a 3.0 in their programs, and they were all on track to graduate at the 125% rate or above. I just wanted to know what were they doing to be successful, in short. And I found that they all implemented 6 common strategies or techniques that helped them to remain successful. But that wasn't enough. It seemed too easy. So I had this bank of 100 men of color, and I decided to test my null hypothesis. And I found that the 75% of those 100 men of color also utilized some combination of those 6 techniques and methods. So I went back to my data, and I looked at it more from a qualitative vantage point. And I saw something marvelous. It jumped off the page and punched me on my big old nose. I saw that 97.8% of the men of color in that study were all operating with the same 3 pillars of mind. See, it wasn't the techniques and methods that were driving the academic performance for those men of color. It was their own thinking and how those techniques and methods fit into their thinking. So that presented a very large opportunity for my team and I. You see, we got together and we decided to create a professional learning community where we would all agree to adopt the same techniques and methods across the board in all our courses so we can help our students operate in those 3 pillars of mind. And, like any good leader would do, I didn't tell anyone yet. I need to make sure that thing was battle tested, that was going to work in the field like it worked in my study. So I went and I I looked at the data for 5 quarters, and I saw a sharp increase in retention, 14%. And I saw a decrease in failure rates of 11%. So there you have it. Teach all your faculty and all your teachers to create classroom strategies that implement techniques that help those students operate within the 3 pillars of mind, and you will see retention rates go up and failure rates go down. You can write the book and go ahead and call it a day, right? Well, that's not so. It doesn't operate that way. See, there's still good teachers and bad teachers. You know those teachers that I met way back in my career, the ones that were, good people and they really liked their students? They all operated in processes and procedures that pointed back to the traditional classroom. They liked school too much. You see, I found that bad teachers, they tend to operate more without mastery. They don't focus on what mastery is. They tend to, instead of providing formative feedback for their students, they want to create a classroom system where their students fit into the mold of the classroom rather than meeting the needs of their individual students. They won't use techniques like I, not F, or incomplete, not failing, so that they can provide that formative feedback and allow students to submit assignments against that formative feedback so they can show that mastery was met, that they were trying to teach the student in the first place. But good teachers, they do the exact opposite. They implement one of the most powerful strategies in education itself. They start with the end in mind. You see, they use exemplars as examples. They show students what an A project or paper looks like even before that student starts working on their own submission so they can jumpstart their students' thinking. But bad teachers, they do the exact opposite. You see, they don't focus on teaching and learning as a whole because they're uncomfortable with creating atmospheres and environments in their classroom that are flexible enough for them to utilize techniques like relaxed deadlines so they can account for the variability in the students' lives, to give that student time and opportunity to turn in a quality piece of work and not just a completed piece of work. But good teachers, on the other hand, they take a lesson from Stephen Covey. They seek to understand before being understood. They look at the demands the students have on their lives outside of the 4 walls of the classroom, and they take account for that. They know all of the non-cognitive factors that are necessary for those students to operate in pillars of mind so they can be successful. But bad teachers are not that considerate. You see, they want students to think that the most important thing in their life at any given time is that class that they're in right here and right now. They even expect some of their students to ignore financial and family obligations or things that those students may need to do so that they can survive on a daily basis, just so they could put that class at the top of the list of priorities in their lives. It's just not realistic. But good teachers, on the other hand, they implement the 4th principle talked about in the book, Why Some Seeds Don't Grow. They accept only what they expect. You see, they help their seeds grow by creating classroom strategies that take account for the techniques and the methods so that they can differentiate their instruction and meet the needs of each student right where they are. That way, each student can always optimize their potential while they're in that classroom. But in my 20 years of teaching, I found it is way more difficult to be a